A rare virus has been leaked from a biological research center in the North Pole. Those infected with the virus will melt into a black liquid in a few days, and individual mutants will become transmitters to attack others. Someone in the base has asked for help from the Atlanta Center for Disease Control. John, who received the news, immediately organized several biochemists to go there. Now there are 3 infected people in the base. One of the infected people has not yet died completely, but Jack has a question. There are hundreds of biochemists in that base. Why do you have to point to yourself? John directly said that the last infected person was Jack's brother. Jack didn't say anything else and left with everyone. In a blink of an eye, they arrived at this secret base. The person in charge of this place went up the mountain to welcome them. Before entering the base, their palms were planted with new products that could penetrate the base. It doesn't look like a big experimental base. In fact, this place is divided into 24 floors from A to Z. When he heard that there were thousands of staff here, Jack was immediately nervous. It is very likely that there are still invisible infected people. He immediately asked the mountain to prepare the information of the 3 infected people for him. There is also a list of people who have been in contact within 48 hours. Then he wore a protective suit with Annie in the lounge. This kind of protection method made John feel a little familiar. In a blink of an eye, Jack came to the lab. Lying on the bed was his brother Peter. His body was covered with blood like a spider web, and the life detector showed that he would not survive tonight. Jack tried to communicate with Peter. When he saw his brother, Peter seemed to have regained some consciousness. He simply mentioned the White House and the liar. Then Peter's expression became vague again. Fortunately, Annie quickly turned on the comm machine. After that, they began to conduct other investigations. Fatty was responsible for the fire experiment. But the guard soldiers actually told him that there were no monkeys here. Fatty was confused that such a huge experimental base would not prepare monkeys for experiments. He had no choice but to use the little white mouse. But it took some time. On the other hand, Jack and Fanny came to the fruit bag of the other 2 infected people. But there was black sticky liquid in the fruit bag. This caused Fanny to spit out the dumplings she ate last year. Later, some people discussed in the lounge. In addition to the bones, the infected people's other organs were also decomposed. But the strange thing is that Peter is still alive. This proves that they are not infected with the same virus. Jack immediately went to his brother's room to find clues. In the process of searching, he saw a USB flash drive. After opening it, it was a diary of Peter's daily life. But in the last record, Jack saw Fanny. Although there was no problem in the language, only the 2 of them understood this gesture. This is a gesture for Naughty running away when they were young. At the same time, Fatty locked the white mouse with the virus together with other white mice. In the end, it was confirmed that the virus was not transmitted by air. But when John took the sample in the sewer, they actually found monkey hair. The guard said there were no monkeys in this base. Obviously, there was something in the mountains that was hiding from them. Then Fatty immediately searched the whole base with John. The 2 of them found an impassable iron gate in a dark corner. Seeing this, John went to pick up the firewood. He used the principle of liquid nitrogen and thermal expansion to easily open the iron gate. Obviously, there were at least 1,000 monkeys in this warehouse, but there was not even a monkey hair here. The 2 of them suddenly found a monkey flashing by. Under the chase between Fatty and John, the monkey walked into a dead end. But just then, Fatty immediately asked Jack to check if he had a wound. After confirming nothing, he bowed his head. It was a virus carrier. The strange thing kept happening. The base issued an alarm. Pete actually escaped from the ventilation ducts. Jack was very surprised at how a dying man could do this, but he didn't have time to explain. They immediately closed the ventilation ducts and released high-concentration anesthetic gas. This concentration can completely kill people. Jack's last request was to go up and take the body with him. He changed into a protective suit and entered the ventilation ducts. Jack found the black liquid smoothly, but because the ducts were too narrow and each duct had an up and down structure, during this viewing process, it was recommended that those with UB symptoms jump directly, because after a long time of viewing, there was a feeling of suffocation. Just when Jack exclaimed that he had no UB symptoms, although he didn't see it, but he heard a voice. Jack followed the voice and saw a person lying in the ducts. But this person was not Pete, who ran away. They took out the man's body. This man is a security guard in the base, and his chief with a passport was also arrested. At this moment, John actually appeared outside the base. He put a small satellite launcher on the ground and then sent a string of codes by mobile phone. Just when John was about to leave, he actually found something terrible in the snow. Thousands of monkeys in the base were frozen to ice here. The man was putting water on the snow in the north, but when he turned around, the countless ice monkeys were half buried in the snow. When he returned to the experimental base, The person in charge had been monitoring the doctor's every move, and he actually talked to John about his employer. Obviously, several doctors had been kept in the dark. At this moment, Pete, who was infected in the base, was purposefully approaching a room. Then he opened the door with a chip. The next day, the attacked people did not die. They described that Pete just subdued himself and then kissed himself. It seems that Pete is deliberately spreading the virus on a large scale. 5 people were attacked yesterday. 2 of them are now missing. Obviously, they are deliberately hiding in a corner of the lab. The monkey that Pete caught was secretly monitored. Suddenly, the iron door opened. A doctor who was infected with the virus appeared behind Pete. At this moment, he still had a trace of his own consciousness. He was talking nonsense. In the language, he repeatedly said that he wanted to escape from here and the liar. Pete ran away quickly while he was not paying attention. Pete, who was almost kissed, almost escaped. When he saw the woman faint, he also let go of his heart. In order to reduce the pain of the infected person, Penny came to the warehouse alone to get the sedative. When he saw the door open, he didn't care. But when he was about to leave, Pete suddenly appeared. This time, he actually said the name of the mountain. Then he escaped from the ventilation duct again. Jack, who knew the news, immediately brought people to the warehouse. They found a few sedatives in the corner. Jack thought that Pete was suppressing his illness. This is a good thing, but the most important thing is to find him. This time, John took the initiative to enter the ventilation duct, and others used life detectors below to help John find Pete. A shadow passed by, but they just heard a sound. Next second, after that, they rescued John. Fortunately, he was not infected with protective clothing. At this time, the soldiers suddenly received a notice. There was a major discovery in the experiment. Annie asked the mountain to take her to Pete's laboratory. When she was looking for Pete's injection record, Chan Zhang's eyes changed. Annie found that Pete had injected 2 unknown drugs for the little white mouse. Seeing this, Annie directly expressed that she wanted to repeat Pete's operation. At this time, the mountain's smile gradually disappeared, because the experiment result was the same as the spread of the virus now, divided into 2 types. The little white mouse of a virus became black water, and the little white mouse of B virus began to attack others gradually. Obviously, B virus is the virus infected by Pete. Now it has become an infectious machine, and the infected doctors gradually began to get angry. They actually took the secret. They wanted to use force directly, but the mountain was suddenly interrupted by Jack. Jack, in order to comfort the emotions of several doctors, he took off his protective clothing directly. This is to make them feel that he is no different from everyone else. After that, Jack comforted Annie. Obviously, she was scared. Even the hands that were going to continue the experiment began to tremble. Suddenly, Fatty came to the room with another fugitive, and he also said that he had a major discovery. But when they sent the woman into the emergency room, strange things kept happening. Soldiers in the base found that one of the doctors wanted to drive a snowmobile to leave here, but he knew that the possibility of leaving was 0. But he still insisted. Seeing this, the soldiers took a step forward and took out a knife directly. The woman was about to take a bath and rest. She saw a man walking out in the dark. She didn't say anything to him, and he went straight ahead. Under the fierce resistance of the woman, the man spread it to her. It turned out that this man in front of her was the carrier of the virus. He spread it in this northern base through a kiss. And the one who did all this was the person in charge of this base, Shan Zhang. He had a mysterious secret. Jack found Annie in the forest. Annie was nervous at this time. Faced with Jack's interrogation, he said that he might have a hallucination because he had too much work to do these days. Seeing that Annie was fine, Jack left his room, but he suddenly heard a sound. Jack followed the sound and came to a room. He seemed to feel Peter's presence, but he didn't see anyone at this time. Jack found Annie. Then Peter collapsed directly on the ground. At this time, the doctors are investigating the trajectory of everyone's formation. Facing the thorns, they also have a one-on-one solution. Suddenly, Jack brought Peter back. This made Shan Zhang and his subordinates nervous. Jack said that Peter took the initiative to find his own help. In order to better control the spread of the virus, Shan Zhang asked his subordinates to bring Jack to the bottom of the base. There was also a terrible biological study here, so they had already turned this place into a natural isolation ward. Every room and equipment was prepared to precisely disperse the crowd. After that, Jack called everyone for a meeting. They split up again, one by one, to see if anyone was infected, and Fatty continued to dissect the monkey to see if he could find anything. But when the 2 came to the place where Fatty was dissecting, the monkey's corpse flew away. Obviously, someone did it on purpose. Seeing that Fatty was going to talk to Shan Zhang, John said that he could find other monkeys. In a blink of an eye, he brought Fatty to the outside of the base. That's right, the 2 were directly here to take medicine. Fatty found something wrong. He immediately asked John why he knew these monkeys were here. Seeing that John knew nothing, Fatty turned around and left. At this time, John opened his mouth directly. He said that he had long known that there was a virus spreading here. He just received an emergency notice from the army base to come here to investigate clearly. Seeing this, Fatty temporarily disconnected the call. And at this time, a few people suddenly encountered one of the fleeing doctors. The other party kept coming forward to ask everyone to help him. But the next second, seeing this, John immediately performed an emergency surgery on the woman. He took out the bullets in his body as he was used to. After that, he blamed Bao for shooting the person who asked for help. But Bao just said that he didn't have a gun. If he had a gun, he would have done the same. John assured himself that he wouldn't shoot the patient and turned around and left. At this time, Fanny and Annie were urgently developing the test paper for testing the virus. After two people's hard work for a day, they could start testing everyone. If infected with the virus, the test paper would turn green. When Fanny left, Annie took out the cotton swab and started testing. Seeing that the test tube didn't change color, Annie let go of her heart. On the other hand, Fatty, who was experimenting with monkeys, found something terrible. In order to study better, they were going to copy the virus more. But it took a few hours. But suddenly, Fatty immediately became agitated. This terrible scene made Fatty ready to ask what they had studied in the mountains. But Fatty's behavior was stopped again. John said before things were clear, he didn't want to be turned into an ice sculpture and thrown out of the base. Not only Fatty, but also Jack was confronting him in front of the mountain. He asked the mountain to give up his experiment. Jack even took him in the name of the first doctor in Atlanta to threaten the mountain. It can be seen that this virus is unusual. Seeing this, the mountain also said a terrible virus spread in the base of North Pole. The top 5 doctors came to resolve the crisis. They spent 24 hours to develop a test paper for the infected. The infected people turned the paper green. They left the infected people in the new underground quarantine in the base. Jack asked the security to bring the first group of infected people here. But just when the security opened the door, the woman rushed out. She was agile and powerful. Obviously, she had reached the final stage of infection. Fanny, who was testing in the underground, was asked by Annie. She also needed to do a virus test. Seeing this, Fanny was very angry. She didn't expect her teammates didn't believe her. To satisfy Annie's curiosity, Fanny did a live test. The security arrived suddenly. Hearing the virus carrying the body, the man shouted directly. This caused the whole quarantine to be in chaos. In an instant, the whole quarantine lost control. Hearing the siren of the infected, everyone became more chaotic. The infected was attacking one of the security guards. Jack immediately organized everyone to return to the quarantine room. When he saw the infected attacking others, Annie recalled what happened last night again. That feeling was extremely real. At this time, the security guard's gun also fell to the ground. Just when the infected was about to attack Annie, it was Jack. He violated the poison he just took a few hours ago. Just when he was about to take Fanny out of the quarantine, Fanny refused. Obviously, she had been infected. After that, Jack forced Shansong to tell him the reason for this virus research. This base was conducting a secret test. That is to mix all the diseases that had happened before together. Then develop a drug that can completely cure all viruses. This drug has been successfully developed and is divided into 2 types, A and B. Through the test, both drugs have a 100% cure rate, but the A drug also has a 100% death rate. The B drug has a death rate of up to 80%. But the most important thing is to prevent the spread of the virus. Shansong could only force all the infected people to put themselves on the quarantine floor. Jack said he would send reinforcements to Atlanta at night. At this time, Fanny, who was in the quarantine floor, no longer regarded herself as a doctor. When she took off her coat, Fanny found her own fingerprints. Seeing this, she immediately confirmed that the virus had mutated. Not everyone would succeed in the test. Annie ran crazy to the side of the phone. But when Annie dialed the phone, someone actually made a small hole. Someone actually put a time bomb at the bottom of the satellite tower. The base instantly lost communication. Seeing this, Fanny was even more nervous. This action may cause the whole base to collapse directly. A terrible virus through 2 days and 3 nights of continuous research. Fanny finally had preliminary results. But John showed a strange expression just when Fanny was about to report. John actually put Fanny down directly and made the scene look like an experiment accident, and then turned around and left. At this time, Jack didn't know that his right-hand man had been killed. He was confronting the person in charge of the base because the mountain decided to close the infected floor and let everyone die. The people on the whole floor also rebelled. They all shut down the air purification system. Within a few hours, the people on the upper floor would release them as a doctor. Fanny, of course, did not agree with such a reckless act. She was kicked out. But at the end of the corridor, a mysterious man in full armor called Fanny over, just when she was being chased by the mutants. That mysterious man directly helped her. After that, they all watched each other carefully. Knowing that the virus would not spread through the air, Fanny took off her mask. But now is not the time to chat, because not only the quarantine floor, but also the doctors are likely to be infected, because the test results will not be 100% accurate. At the same time, a female doctor found Fanny. She walked into the room and showed her arm. This is a symptom of infection. Seeing this, Fanny tested again, but through the test, the woman was not abnormal. Fanny thought the woman might be a little anxious. Then she advised her to drink more hot water to relieve the pain. And as the researcher Jack, she was still doing her best to treat her brother. Seeing her brother in such pain, she planned to develop a drug to cure the virus and test it on Peter. Then Jack took out the frozen drug to defrost it. He repeatedly confirmed to Jack whether to test the little mouse first. But Jack took the operator directly and pressed the confirmation button, only to see the yellow liquid gradually sent into Peter's body. His symptoms were actually relieved. Jack plans to stay by Peter's side to observe the changes. And at this time, Fanny in the room found something wrong. The female doctor has been talking to the air. When Fanny was about to leave, she didn't want to be sent to the quarantine floor. When Fanny was about to leave, she was told by the woman to stay in her room. The other party observed for tens of minutes and found that there was a tumor in Fanny's body. Blurred language and trembling hands are all symptoms of a tumor patient. In order to keep the female doctor's secret, Fanny left her in her room. After that, she found Jack. When Fanny was about to speak, Peter woke up. At this time, he actually had the ability to communicate, but Fanny was still anxious to say that there may be false information about the test. In addition to the quarantine floor, it is very likely that other people also have the virus. Jack was not panicked. He immediately asked Fanny to prepare a new test paper. The top priority was to inquire about what happened to Peter. Although he had the ability to communicate, what Peter said was all about their childhood memories. His memories seemed to be sealed in the past. They found that the virus in Peter's body was gradually recurring. Then Jack came to Peter again. This time, he kept following Peter's words. Suddenly, Peter woke up. He just mentioned the white room and the words that Fanny might know when they saw that Peter had lost his heartbeat. They were ready to rescue him immediately. At the same time, the person in charge of the base opened a hidden door. This can lead to all floors. He showed up with his subordinates when the purifier was turned on. Jack said he came with sincerity. He didn't want to make a scene, so he came here alone this time. He hoped that a few people would not create panic. Jack used his own bowl not to ensure that they would save everyone as soon as possible. Seeing this, the man also put down the weapon in his hand. They decided to restore the air purifier system when the two were about to leave. Obviously, this was the purpose of this expedition in the mountains. He asked his subordinates to go back to the upper floor alone. He wanted to do something. Then he walked into the depths of the isolation floor, but he turned towards the infected person. When he saw the infected person, he had a slight sense of fear. Then he came directly to a wall. In order to let the world not know their existence, the man set a fire. Then he took out the virus file transmitted by mobile phone. The other party ordered John to find Dr. Jack again. However, in the entire northern base, there were not only John, but also Dr. Jack. The person in charge of the base, Dr. Jack, was afraid of the infected person, and he even stabbed himself. At this time, Annie in the isolation floor was still trying to persuade everyone to unite, but no one was willing to open the door for her. Suddenly, Dr. Jack appeared in front of the two. Seeing this, Annie immediately found a dark corner to bandage Dr. Jack. Then Dr. Jack took the two back to the narrow corridor. But they didn't know that the lights here had been broken by Dr. Jack. They could only use the fluorescent stick to slowly move forward. But on the way to rest in the mountains, a few people heard the sound. Dr. Jack picked up the fluorescent stick and brought Annie into a room. He quickly blocked the iron door. Annie still wanted to go back to save Anna. After that, the two kept avoiding the infected person's pursuit, but they were like locating the location to accurately find the location of a few people. Fortunately, Anna saved two people in time. Then the two did a simple bandage, but Annie suddenly had some images in her mind. She was in a daze and even forgot that she had been infected. It turned out that Anna had always been another person she had imagined. Everything Anna had done was also done by Annie herself. At the same time, Jack found his body in Fatty's lab. After that, Jack began to think deeply. Onbao thought it was an accidental experiment, but Jack thought it was a deliberate murder. He was furious. Two members of his team had already been killed. Then the security guard brought Jack to the monitoring room. But the monitoring of the time when Fatty was killed was destroyed. Onbao was surprised because only the mountain had the right to come here. Seeing this, Jack was ready to verify and find out the truth. As soon as Jack left, Onbao saw John at this time. He was asking around about Dr. Zucker in the base because this name has been around for a long time. The backbone staff here, Ziding, was also confused about this person's name. There was indeed such a doctor, but he didn't know why this doctor disappeared. And everyone said that he was locked in a white room. At this time, Onbao suddenly came to the room. He took John to another room. Onbao knew it was John who did it. Fatty was also killed by him, but they both have each other's handle. So the two of them didn't make a big move. After that, John found Jack. Obviously, Jack didn't suspect him. Seeing this, John directly said that Fatty mentioned Dr. Zucker. This made Jack get up immediately to look for this person. Jack didn't find the mountain, but he kept pressing Onbao to tell him what he knew. Then Onbao mentioned John. He took Jack to John's room. In this way, Onbao was able to expose John's bad deeds. Sure enough, he blew up the satellite antenna of the base, and he was still using a small satellite to contact a mysterious organization. The results of Fatty's research were also stolen. They also talked about Dr. Zucker and the White Room, but Jack just turned around. The security guard actually disappeared in his vision. At this time, the security guard has changed into a protective suit and walked deep into the North Pole. And all this seems to be in John's plan. Jack on the other side immediately found Jack and asked about the White Room. At this time, the security guard had already reached the end of the rope. He started the mechanism in the coldest place. The security guard started the underground machine. This is the container to store the virus. But he was suddenly attacked and fell to the ground. The security guard was John. John took Dr. Zucker's head away. After that, John took the virus sample to the designated location. In the process of contacting his superiors, he suddenly felt a big impact. He took off John's coat and shoes. Then he took the virus head away carefully. Less than a few hours later, John's body was dragged by someone. When he woke up again, he was already in a room. The woman said she was a resident of this area. She suspected that John had something to do with the disappearance of children in recent years. In the face of Jack's dishonesty, the woman immediately issued a warning. She was going to let John stay for 2 days and then take her back to the base to confirm her guess. At this time, Annie was infected in the base and was about to enter the final stage. The wound in her neck was basically healed within a few hours. But Annie didn't notice anything wrong because she couldn't protect herself. Annie fell ill when she was about to leave. Then she collapsed on the ground when she woke up again. The mountain was shining Annie's eyes with flashlights. Then she took a bottle of red liquid and gave it to Annie. Annie, who had been injected with the drug, passed out again. At the same time, Jack, who was experimenting, made new progress. He asked Fanny to see what was different at first. Fanny didn't find anything strange. After Jack made her look at it again and again, Fanny found something wrong. The virus is not naturally produced, but man-made. Seeing this, Jack immediately found a question mark in the mountain. He didn't understand what the mountain was doing in the virus. The original virus mutated through his blessing. But the mountain just said it was to better heal others. And only Peter knew the specific content of this study. With the progress of the study, the two began to test. Their next preparation was exactly Fatty's yesterday. But they didn't do protection. This led to the virus spreading directly in the container. In a few seconds, it spread all over the place. Seeing this, Jack picked up something and sprayed it at the virus. Obviously, it worked. The fact proved that low temperature can effectively suppress the virus. Seeing this, the two immediately came to Peter. They covered Peter with an ice bag. The life detector actually reacted. Seeing this, the two immediately thought of Dr. Ed. Jack came directly to Dr. Ed's room. They knew that Ed was studying a new experiment. This experiment has already had results. Seeing someone recognize their research results and was willing to let him do a human test, Ed couldn't wait. In a blink of an eye, they brought Peter here. His machine can keep people breathing in the water for a few hours, but it must be his own liquid. This can also help Peter to cool down effectively. Dr. Ed started the machine. Blue liquid flowed into the suit, seeing Peter having a dehydration symptom. Dr. Ed said this was a normal phenomenon. Fanny wanted to stop it, but was rejected by Jack. The machine reacted. Peter's temperature had dropped to 20 degrees Celsius. His body also reacted weakly. Obviously, this thing worked, but Peter was still in a coma, so it didn't work. At the door of the lab, Fanny was observing secretly. Then she asked John to find John's body with her. They came to the outskirts, but John's body flew away. Fanny was alert. She was sure John was taken away by someone else. She also had her own reason. She only saw people selling planes from afar. These people were not members of the support group, but members of the organization behind John. Meanwhile, Annie, who was kept in the quarantine room, woke up. Strangely, her body was fully recovered, and Annie's eyes also changed. The woman closed her eyes on the floor full of dead bodies. She was nervous when she heard the sound from the door. The infected person suddenly heard the sound from the outside and turned around to leave. Annie slowly looked around and made sure that the person had left. She was put down directly, but when she was about to be attacked, the infected person was scared away by her. And all this was because the red medicine in the mountain was injected for her. At this time, the mountain was receiving guests and the other party came to the guests fully armed. The woman claimed to be in charge of the Dragon Head organization. She already knew the name of Dr. Jack. After that, she immediately convened an emergency meeting and said that this northern base was an investment project obviously. The mountain was also very respectful to Sizzy in order to make Jack make the antidote as soon as possible. Sizzy promised to meet all Jack's requirements, and Jack's only request was to bring Annie to him because she was an essential member after that. Sizzy asked the mountain to have a private meeting. Without further ado, she directly attacked the mountain. The project Sizzy invested in was the virus and the antidote, but the mountain only developed the virus for them. Sizzy asked the mountain to develop the antidote so that her life might be saved, and according to the request, except for the mountain, when the antidote is successfully developed, it must be killed, and a special team from Atlanta will be dispatched to see Sizzy ready to bring Annie to the isolated floor. The mountain directly opened the hidden door and she came to Annie's room again. Annie was extremely weak at this time. When she told the mountain about her symptoms, she almost couldn't control her joy. Then the mountain immediately helped Annie to do the eye protection work, and when she was wrapped in a bandage, she even shed tears. At the same time, Jack in the lab had noticed something was wrong. Through the conversation, Jack felt that Sizzy was not a good person. They decided to delay the time to develop the antidote. After that, Sizzy began to gather people because she had never seen the infected and didn't know how strong they were. So this time they were fully armed. A few people came to the hospital in the isolated floor. There was a dead end and there was no way out. A few people kept trying to break through, but when they entered a room, the infected attacked directly. Sizzy shot the infected in front of her, but she didn't expect more gunshots. In an instant, the infected spread all over the corridor. After a few people got out of danger, they decided to go back to the safe house for the time being. At this time, the mountain had brought Annie back, but when they went out, they met Jack. It turned out that Jack had been bullied by Jack since he was a child. The woman in front of him was his sister. Seeing this, Jack immediately gave a wooden box to Annie and asked her to go back to the lab to rest. It turned out that Jack had a twin brother. When he was 4 years old, Jack took him away from his family. The person who could let him know the truth was John. John has been contacting his superior, Sizzy. John can't solve this incident in secret. Sizzy is the one who brings people to solve this matter in person. Although Sizzy hit John hard, their relationship is very subtle. Annie, who returned to the lab, has been in a state of unconsciousness. The thing in the wooden box given by John was a pair of eyebrows. When Annie was confused, Jack rushed back. The two of them hugged each other directly. Jack was very curious about how Annie came back and why she was infected and recovered after the virus, but he suddenly found the changes in Annie's eyeballs. Now these are not problems, but the biggest trouble. The infected person actually left the isolation layer through the elevator they had just started. In the ventilation duct, the mutated corpse was observing the humans below, and the people in the lab didn't notice at all. The two of them were very curious about why Annie was safe. She had obviously been infected by the virus. At this time, Annie actually made a joke with the two of them that wasn't very funny, but suddenly, the base issued a warning. Seeing this, Jack immediately went out to check. It turned out that the infected person destroyed the food warehouse. They didn't completely lose consciousness. It was more like planning an organized and disciplined mission. At this time, the mountain was being locked up. He was going to find the mountain to talk about the infected person.